Hello everyone. Welcome back to English podcast session. I'm John, your host for today.
And I'm Amelia. We're so glad to have you with us. Today, we've got a really interesting topic to discuss how childhood shapes personality, nature versus nurture. It's a classic debate in psychology and something that affects all of us, whether we realize it or not.
That's right, Amelia. It's all about what makes us who we are. Do we inherit our traits from our parents, or is it our environment that shapes us the most?
Exactly. We'll explore how genetics and early experiences both play a role in forming personality traits. And to make sure you get the most out of this episode, we'll also have an intermediate vocabulary break where we explain some key terms. Stick around for that.
So, let's dive in, Amelia. How do you think personality starts to form in childhood?
Great starting point, John. Let's first define personality. It's a combination of patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that make a person unique. These traits influence how we interact with the world and others.
Right, and when we talk about personality traits, we're talking about things like extroversion, conscientiousness, and agreeableness, things that we often notice in ourselves and others, even from a young age.
Exactly. And the question becomes, where do these traits come from? Are we born with them, or do they develop because of our experiences?
I've always wondered about that myself. Some people seem naturally shy, while others are outgoing. Can these differences really be explained by something as simple as DNA?
That's the question we're tackling today. Let's start by looking at the nature side of things.
Okay, so nature refers to the genetic factors that influence our personality. We're talking about the traits we inherit from our parents. Studies show that genetics can account for a significant portion of personality development.
Right. For example, researchers have found that twins raised apart can have very similar personalities, even when they grew up in completely different environments. That suggests that something in our genetic makeup is driving how we behave.
That's fascinating. So, if you have an outgoing parent, there's a higher chance you might inherit those extroverted traits.
Yes, and that's the argument for the nature side of the debate. Certain traits, like being more anxious or more empathetic, can run in families, meaning our genetics play a big part.
So, does that mean our personality is all determined by our DNA from the start?
Not quite. Let's not forget about nurture, John. While genetics set the stage, our experiences really bring those traits to life.
Ah, yes, nurture. So, this is the environment, the people, places, and experiences that help shape our personality over time.
Exactly. From the way our parents raise us to the friends we make in school, these external factors influence our emotional responses, our behavior, and how we see the world.
So, if someone grows up in a loving, supportive environment, they might develop a sense of security and confidence. But if they face adversity or neglect, it might lead to issues with self-esteem or trust.
Right. And I think one of the most important things is that, unlike nature, our environment is something we can change and influence. A positive environment can help someone with genetic predispositions to anxiety, for example, manage those feelings better.
It's so interesting how something as simple as a parent's approach to discipline can impact a child's personality. A child who feels secure and valued is more likely to be confident and develop a strong sense of self-worth.
On the other hand, children who face emotional neglect or even constant criticism might struggle with self-doubt. It's amazing how these early years can have such long-lasting effects.
Now, we come to the most interesting part: how nature and nurture work together to shape us. It's not just a matter of one or the other. It's both.
Yes, and this is the nature vs. nurture debate in action. Nature might give us certain tendencies, but how those tendencies develop depends largely on our environment.
Exactly. Think about it, a child might have a genetic predisposition for high intelligence. But if that child doesn't have access to good education or stimulating experiences, those genetic potentials might never fully develop.
And on the flip side, a child might have some genetic traits that make them shy, But if they grow up in an environment that encourages social interaction like an active school or community, they might learn to overcome their natural shyness.
It's like planting a seed in different types of soil. No matter the genetics, the environment plays a huge role in how that seed grows.
Exactly. And this balance between nature and nurture helps explain why siblings from the same family can still end up with very different personalities.
All right, time for our vocabulary break. Let's look at some important terms we've mentioned so far.
First up, we have genetics. This refers to the biological information we inherit from our parents, which influences traits like eye color, height, and even personality. For example, his love for music is in his genetics. His mother was a professional violinist. Next is environment. This includes all the external factors that influence a person's development, things like family, friends, school, and even cultural influences. For instance, her environment growing up was filled with books and travel, so she became very curious about the world. Then we have trait. This is a characteristic that defines someone's behavior or personality. For example, patience is a trait that helps him deal with stressful situations. And finally, nurture. This refers to how we are raised and influenced by our experiences. For instance, good nurture can help a child develop confidence and resilience.
Great! Now that you're familiar with these terms, let's get back to our discussion.
So far, we've discussed genetics and environment separately, but what about the early experiences we have in life? How do they influence personality?
It's so important. Childhood is the critical period when most of our personality traits are formed. Our brains are highly flexible and impressionable at that age.
For example, children who are consistently praised for effort and progress tend to develop a growth mindset. They start to believe that their abilities can improve with hard work.
And children who are given a lot of love and care are more likely to grow up emotionally secure. But if a child experiences neglect or abuse, it can have lasting impacts on their self-esteem and emotional regulation.
That's true. Early experiences form the foundation for emotional health later in life. It's why childhood trauma can sometimes lead to difficulties with mental health in adulthood.
But it's also empowering to know that positive experiences like supportive friends, mentors, and encouraging teachers can change the trajectory for someone who has had a difficult childhood. To bring all of this together, let's share a short story. It's about two children, Lucas and Emma, who grew up in different circumstances. Lucas came from a stable family with lots of encouragement. Emma, on the other hand, faced a lot of challenges and adversity in her early years. Lucas was a natural leader, confident and outgoing from a young age. He excelled in school, always encouraged by his parents. But Emma was more reserved and struggled with her studies. Despite this, her teachers noticed her creative potential and encouraged her to take up art. Over time, Emma's love for painting helped her build confidence and discover new aspects of her personality. She learned to trust herself more, even though her childhood environment had been tough. It just shows how both nature and nurture work together. Lucas had the genetic predispositions for leadership, but his environment helped him thrive. Emma, despite her challenges, found a way to flourish because of the positive experiences she had later on.
Exactly. Our early experiences don't have to define us. They help shape who we become, but we can always grow and evolve.
So, in conclusion, our personalities are shaped by a combination of genetics and the environment we grow up in. Neither one is the sole determining factor.
Yes, and the good news is that with positive influences, we can continue to develop and grow throughout our lives.
Thanks for joining us today on English Podcast Session. We hope this episode has given you some insight into how childhood shapes personality.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.